The Human Optimization Podcast is proudly brought to you by Vicon Supplements, where quality meets sustainability. Vicon's all-natural supplements are handcrafted and sustainably produced in Canada, bringing you products that nourish both your well-being and our planet. Visit viconsupplements.com today and be a part of a greener, healthier future.
Are you ready to embark on a journey to the best version of you? Join me, Lisa Pitel-Killah, as I dive deep into the world of hair tissue mineral analysis and functional medicine with fellow experts, and guide you on the path of unlocking your full potential. As a multi-time kettlebell sport world champion, I'm on a mission to reach high-performance professionals from around the world to help you minimize tiring symptoms, maximize health, and gain unstoppable energy. This is the Human Optimization Podcast. Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of the Human Optimization Podcast. I'm, of course, your host, Lisa Pitel-Killah, and I have an amazing gentleman here with us today. You are going to want to stay right until the end to be able to get a 2-week trial to his app. This is Dr. Lloyd Glauberman. Let me tell you a little bit about him. He's a clinical psychologist with more than 40 years of experience helping individuals optimize health, performance, quality of life through sustainable behavior change. And how he does it is fascinating. He's the creator of what's called hypno-peripheral processing, or otherwise known as HPP, an audio-based self-regulation method used in over 125,000 programs worldwide, and the founder of Lifestyle Intelligence, otherwise known as LQ, which is an app. It's a psychology-first framework for building lasting habits around sleep, nutrition, movement, and stress. And who doesn't need that? Dr. Glauberman, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me with an intro like that. I have an awful lot to be able to to do here.
We've set the bar high.
That was overwhelming, but I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, I love it. Well, we have so much to dive into. And I want to talk about, I want to start kind of in one place, because you do high performance techniques, right? You work with a lot of high performers. And I mean, your technology and your processing has been used all over the world. So I want to talk about HPP.
Okay.
Let's start there with the basics, and we'll move into some of the other things that can kind of branch off that. But tell us about hypno-peripheral processing. How did this come about? What does it mean?
Okay. Let's go back to 1980 when I began my practice. I was in practice starting then. And obviously, like lots of psychologists, I was interested in hypnosis.
Yep.
Who isn't? Right? It's one of those things where nobody quite knows what it is, but it's fascinating, and let's see what can happen. So I took some workshops, and one of the workshops had 2 guys leading the show. And they went through the typical kinds of stuff and the inductions, the single inductions with people, and how to get them into a trance state, changing your voice, using language, all the kind of stuff that one typically does under those circumstances. But then something interesting happened. They brought up one of the people in the audience to be the next subject. And then both hypnotists, both psychologists, began to speak simultaneously to the subject. One in one ear on one side, the other ear on the other side. And I'm looking and listening to this, and I'm going, what in the world are these guys doing? How can anybody sit and follow 2 trains of thought simultaneously, right?
Yeah.
And then something strange happened. As I'm listening, I'm beginning to go into a trance state. And I said to myself, Lloyd, something interesting is going on here. And it has to do with things that you never thought about. So basically, the overload, in a pleasant way, tunes people out. And when it's working really well, you end up in a state not quite awake, not quite asleep. That state is called the hypnagogic state. Everybody knows that state, every night when they drift off to sleep. But they don't pay any attention to it because you're only in it for basically seconds, maybe a minute, maybe. Everybody remembers strange imagery floating around. No, that's just my dreaming mind, whatever. In any event, what's most interesting about it is it's very powerful. The question is, you're only in it for a very short period of time when you're about to go to sleep. So I said to myself, this is an interesting idea. Why don't you think about doing audio material, audio tracks? This way, everything could be simplified. People can put on headphones. And then I went about the business of trying to do that. Let me tell you, this was not easy to do. I had to buy a little 4-track recording device. I had to figure out time to be able to do this. But slowly over time, I decided to become a storyteller. And I used Joseph Campbell's myth of the hero as the theme for all of what I was doing, right? Person with a problem goes out in the world, gets involved with a magical character, has a transformational experience, comes back a changed person, goes on with their life and enjoys it more. The whole idea was to have that theme all the way through. You're capable of changing. If you listen, you have the mechanisms inside your mind and brain to be able to utilize without you knowing it. Anyway, so I started writing stuff, and the first series, not very good. But I got
There's
enough
always version one.
enough good feedback to keep going. And I began to be very comfortable in a recording studio.
Nice.
And then I got lucky. I had these bunch of programs, and a friend of mine knew one of the people who was a very large performer in the business of selling personal development products.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so I went to Chicago, met with them, talked about what I was doing, and I could see everybody was a little bit, let's say, weirded out by what I was talking about. They said, fairy tales, stories, hypnosis. We basically sell products to people doing business, and this is a little bit weird. But so I flew to Chicago to basically have people tell me, why are you here? Okay. So I turned to the fellow who was in charge and I said, do you ever give away free products to your clientele? He said, yeah. I said, I'll be glad to give you a bunch of stuff, send it to people. If they like it, okay. 80% of the people loved it. They started selling my stuff and they sold a lot of it, right? So let me talk about how it's set up. HPP stands for peripheral processing, as opposed to subliminal kinds of things, which everybody knows is below the surface of awareness. This means it's there, but you don't notice it. So the whole idea was to structure messages and suggestions in a way that would do two things: get you into a very relaxed state so you drifted away, and you would be able to process that information easily because you wouldn't even know that you were doing it. And one more bit, the tag story to the introduction. A friend of mine was in the personal development business. This goes back 1980s, late 1980s into the 1990s. And he sold some books. He was a very well-respected person talking about all the things that were out there available for people to change. That was the beginning of people changing kinds of states of consciousness. So he asked if he could use one of my audio programs at a workshop that he was doing Saturday afternoon. I said, absolutely. So I bring the stuff. He says, you can come along and hang out. I said, okay. So he had I think there were about 30 people in the workshop. He had everybody put the headphones on and listen to a program. It was a self-esteem program. At the end, he asked people for their feedback. So like one by one, people would stand up and they say, that was really interesting. I found myself drifting off. I was very relaxed. It was a very different kind of experience, but I feel really good. One by one. Then there's a pause and he says, is there anybody else who has something to say? A woman from the far back of the group stands up and says, gee, that the most relaxed I've ever been. And then she pauses and says, my God, this is the first time I've ever spoken in a group in my life.
Oh, wow.
And I'm standing there going, no, she didn't just really say that. Oh, come on. What? She heard the message speak, which was embedded in all of the histrionics of the program, right? Because there's a lot of things going on. You got a story here, you got a story here, you're drifting off. At that moment in time, I realized, this is actually useful.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of a really nice spread. Now, putting it in this app along with straightforward pieces, informational pieces, conscious mind information. Because right now, we need both. We need people altering their consciousness and we need them learning. So I tried to put that all together. But the HPP thing it surprised the hell out of me. All came
That is
from me watching a couple of
amazing.
guys on stage and thinking, what in the world are they doing? And it turned out to be the most influential moment of my professional career.
That is amazing. I always love asking people too, is what drew you to want to know more about the mind? Right? There's obviously history there. What brought you to that?
The mind and brain, I mean, our minds and brain, what can be said? We are the universe recreated. If you think about, presumably, the universe began with that single cell, the explosion, right? Well, sounds familiar, right? Egg, sperm, one cell, boom, explodes. And we are what, 33 trillion cells in our minds and brains? We have the most interesting thing in the universe, as far as we know right now, is the human brain, right? But we're so used to having one that rarely do we think about appreciating it the way we should, because it is absolutely remarkable. And part of what the work that I do is to make sure you take good care of your brain. What's
Mm-hmm.
more important than that? Because I mean, having done everything wrong for a while, I know the sequence from being a jerk to taking care of myself in the way that makes some sense. So
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, too funny. I mean, when we learn along the way, that's all part of the process. Right. So let's talk about some of the conscious now, because you talk a lot about your eating, sleeping, and movement,
mhm.
right? And how important, and stress. I mean, oh my gosh. I think today, I loosely say today, for a long time, the things that we're exposed to, the energetic, imbalances we have, all affects us from a stressful perspective, and people don't realize it.
If you think about, let's go back to the beginning, literally when we were born, because there's a way of looking at who we were at that moment in time, which gives us all the information we need to know that we should focus on. Okay. Children eat, sleep, and move. Infants, that's what they do. They have brains, but they don't have minds yet. Right. Right. So there's no cognition. There is only sensation. Sensation back then is cognition. Does an infant ever overeat? Does an infant ever not sleep when it's supposed to sleep or not move when it needs to move? Everything we need to know about the core elements we were born with, it was wired into us. So what happens? Well, systematically, culture and family drive out all that useful sensory information with methods and other information that is completely useless and which basically messes up who we are on every level, right? And for me, and I think science would probably back this, the single most important thing we do is sleep.
Absolutely.
My goodness. My goodness. But people just don't get that. I came across a very interesting piece of information this week, which was tied together to something I'm sure you were aware of, but we're aware of this, I think, 2017, when we found out that when we sleep, the brain cleans itself, right? Now, whoa, I didn't know that. I was always assuming that what happened when we were sleeping was the brain stored memories and all the kinds of stuff that had to do with the events of the day, but not house cleaning. I never knew that cerebral spinal fluid poured into the brain, and then this washing machine kind of thing went on and everything gets flushed out. But that's what happens. So a few days ago, I was reading an article that takes it a bit further. Now, all of us have had some really bad days where we didn't sleep very well, or a couple of days, right? So, and you know that when you're going about the chores and conversations of everyday life, when you're sleep deprived, occasionally your mind kind of goes blank. What was I talking about?
Absolutely.
What was I talking about? Well, you want to know what was happening at that moment in time? Your brain basically said, you messed this up last night. I couldn't do the cleaning. I'm going to do the cleaning while you're awake.
Oh
So
my
forget about
gosh.
to have that conversation with your boss, because I'm going to mess you up for a while, because cleaning your brain is much more important with the conversation you were about to have. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, oh my
Wow.
goodness. Like, well, what else needs to be said? If it's going to mess up if it's going to mess up the structure of your day to clean itself, it's important,
Yeah.
right? That's
Absolutely.
that's our brain. And like I said, there's nothing in the universe quite like the human brain.
Yeah. I agree. Well, and the I think that the HPP is so interesting because again, it's there, we're just not aware of it. We don't understand it, right? And I feel like, and I'd love to get your opinion on this because, people talk about how much of our brain we're actually using at this day and age. Where are we at? What are your thoughts on the percentage of what we actually know and how much we're using?
You mean in terms of how much of our brain is available to us, but obviously we're not using a lot of it because, well, it would be hard to come up with a percentage because I
Mm,
don't know what different kinds of things, but
yeah,
my guess is that I would say probably 2/3 of the population of the country sleep deprived, right?
yeah, yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
And I mean, there was a number that I came across that was mind boggling when it came to younger people. And by the way, what's more important than the kids, teenagers, right? Uh, there are right now 13 million high schoolers in the public education system in the country. Okay. Now, given the importance of sleep and given the importance of teenagers sleeping because they're going through growth spurts, so it's not unusual for a teenager to average 9 or 10 hours, assuming that they had the time to do that, right? That's a lot of time. So, given today's lifestyle, right? What's the probability of a kid having to get up probably between 6 and 6:30 to get to school by 8 o'clock? That's fair, right? Is that kid going to bed at between 8 and 9? No, they're doing all kinds of jiggling on their devices, coming up with ways to interact with a world that doesn't actually exist in real life, and one that you should stay far away of. But that's a different story altogether. So pardon my intrusion of my evaluation of what goes on most of the time. So you've got all of these kids sleep deprived, which means attention is messed up, obviously, which means eating increases because we need more energy because we're awake more of the time. So the brain needs more fuel. So the brain creates the illusion of hunger. Now think about it. The brain basically says, oh, by the way, you're really hungry right now. You better get something to eat because I need some energy. I'm serious. That's what happens, right? So all these kids are getting messed up, which means that by the time they're in their 30s, the kinds of illnesses that they're going to experience, the kinds of things that other generations started happening in their late 40s, early 50s.
Yeah.
It's going to happen
Wow.
sooner. And the one thing to keep in mind is that means insurance costs are already high. Watch out
Yeah.
for that at this moment in time. But
Wow.
how are
Wow.
we going to interrupt this addictive thing that's
Yeah.
going on? It's monstrous.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
And yeah, well,
Yeah. And it's so interesting. And I remember too, thinking back to a long time ago, my teenage years, I found it so hard to get up in the morning. Right. And I was one of the kids who was pretty good. I went to bed at like 9:30, 10 o'clock, probably a little later than I should. But yeah, between, school and skating after school, 6 days a week, almost like I'd skate on the weekends and the only day I got off with, I think Sunday. Yeah, it was hard. Exhausted.
I understand. I,
Yeah.
I used to think that you were supposed to get up with an alarm clock. That was
Mm,
actually part of the process, the system. I had no idea that that you could keep sleeping because you were supposed to keep sleeping because what we've just been talking about. I didn't know
yeah.
that. I just
Yeah.
thought, well, that's what you do because
Hmm.
anything, right?
Yeah.
It's like food. The food that you grew up with, you think, right? My mom loved to have me eat. She was a stay-at-home mom. I grew up in the 50s and the 60s. So stay-at-home moms was typical. And my mom, her job was to take care of the family. She did a wonderful job. She was a lovely, loving woman, but she loved to see me eat because that made her feel that she was doing a good job. So fortunately, back in those days, I was very active because there was no digital dopey devices to keep me. So I was able to at least burn off some calories. Of course, I was still 30 pounds overweight, but I could live with that because I was active and it was, what can you do?
Yeah.
It took
Yeah.
me a while to figure out that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think many people go through the same thing. I want to talk about a question
Hmm.
because we talked about kind of the HPP, talking about the conscious versus, and you called it a different state, but the twilight state.
The hypnagogic state
Yes.
in between waking and sleep is so incredibly powerful. And can you keep somebody there? Well, it appears that you can keep them in that state. When I first started doing this, I got involved with a company that wanted to use the programs with something else that they were doing, but they wanted to do some research. So they hired a neuroscientist who wired people up to see what experiences they were having while they were listening. And sure enough, what was happening is people were drifting, beginning in our typical beta state, the state we're in now, going into alpha, which is the relaxed state, the yoga kind of state, the meditative state,
Mm-hmm.
but then into theta. That's the hypnagogic state. And they stayed there. The subjects stayed there for the 15 minutes that the dual stories were being told.
Wow.
Right. And that for me was like, oh my, this thing might actually be useful. Because I didn't have that information. They didn't have the skills to be able to find that information. I lucked out. So it turned out that it was useful. And then I had some people one woman did a dissertation on weight loss using my stuff, using a hypnosis tape and using regular stuff. And my stuff, if you're putting modesty aside, outperformed the other things dramatically. Yeah, so
Amazing.
there was a couple of programs like that where it showed that this was actually useful, and I had no idea that was going to be happening, but I looked into people who were in the process of doing research, and that's what we discovered. There was some value to these things, which was very satisfying.
Absolutely. Well, and tell me, so you definitely are. I think this is important in the new. I don't say new, in the existing biohacking world, right? Biohackers are looking for longevity solutions. They're looking for different things. So Why would you say most biohacks fail without some type of behavioral alignment?
Because people need a model of reality that's meaningful,
Hmm.
right? You need to know that making changes is not a straight line, right? It's 3 steps forward, a step and a half back. So you have to get used to that reality in order to succeed. Because if you go in with the idea that, oh, that okay, this is it, this time, then every time you hit a bump, and if you stay there for like, you have 3 weeks really good, and then a week, everything starts to, the wheels come off. It's really easy to slip back into the old patterns. Oh, it's okay if I do this, but we all know what happens when that happens. You end up in the place you were before. So the whole idea is to get people into a frame of mind where they accept the fact that there are no straight lines. There's got to be bumps, there's got to be glitches, but it's what happens most of the time that matters. So if you're doing the right thing 65% of the time, 2 out of every 3 days,
Hmm.
everything's going to work out, right? That'll give you that one extra day of doing it over the course of a year, whether it's weight loss, whether it's exercising, whatever else is really important to you in your model of what a healthy lifestyle should be. Accept the fact that you're going to have some bumpiness along the way. If you install that, then you're not deterred from the overall process of going forward. I know from my own
Yeah.
experience, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've been taking care of myself for a long time now. I still have weeks where I'm not doing such a great job, but then that voice in the back of my head smacks me inside and says, okay, enough bullshit, Lloyd. Let's get back to business here.
It's true. It kicks in and you're like, yeah, I'm listening. It's fine. I got this. I got this. Well, and that brings back more of, you know, we talk about sustainable systems that we follow or disciplines we follow. And that's really where I feel like a lot of programs come up short because it's I call it a flash in the pan solution, right? Flash in the pan solution. You do great for 3 months and you change your life, but it's not sustainable. And so you set yourself up in the beginning for success, but only to fail.
It's important to keep track of, which is hard to do, that internal dialogue that you have, because each of us has a very seductive voice in there,
Mm-hmm.
the con voice, right? Where we maneuver ourselves with a little bit of bull bleep along the way, right? And by the way, keeping track of what's going on in your mind is a useful thing anyway. And everybody knows what I'm talking about right now, right? So yeah, pay attention. There's a lot to learn, and take your time, because once you start noticing stuff, well, change is inevitable. So
It's amazing.
yeah,
And I
by the
have,
way,
so
for everybody listening right now, that was a hypnotic suggestion, so use it usefully.
I like it. Tell me, okay, so you talked about using the app and information in some different settings. So, at the workshop and things like that. Is there a better time of day? Like, can people listen to this and then drift off to sleep at night? Is it better to use it in the daytime? Like, is there an optimal
You could
practice?
use it in any way for people who who have difficulty falling asleep. But by the way, let me go back and explain the structure of it one more time so everybody's clear. It starts off with a single story. Person with a problem goes out into the world, meets a Joseph Campbell character, and from there, there's a pause, and then two different stories start up simultaneously. So you've got the overload going on, but everything is very slow. And there's music in the background. So after about 5 minutes, the probability is you'll begin drifting off. That's when you can, without knowing it, pick up the messages which are woven into the fabric of the stories. If you find it's useful for you to sleep, that will mean you probably won't finish the program, but that doesn't mean what you heard while you were still awake won't be useful, because it will. So it can be used in non-sleep settings it can be used to help you sleep as well. The whole idea is to get yourself into a relaxed state. And by the way, most people rarely understand what a really relaxed state is. And these things are really, really good at helping because it taps into your brain's ability to do this. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to learn anything. This is an automatic process that just is set into motion by the music, by me talking very slowly, and everything kind of helps you drift off. And then only good things can happen from that moment on.
Well, I agree. And I can't wait to tap into the app. I'm going to train. And I think this is amazing. Amazing. I can't believe this is the first time I'm hearing about it. Okay. So if you want 2 weeks for free on the app, you just need to hit the website.
Absolutely.
Link is good. Yeah. Link's going to be in the description. It's lifestyleintelligencelq.com. And of course, you can learn more about Dr. Glauberman there. And we've got some other links as well that you can follow and learn more. I say, give it a try. I think this is amazing.
I'm trying to get this concept into a place where it is alongside the other intelligences. We started out with IQ, right? And then Dan Goldman wrote a book about emotional intelligence based on the work of a couple of other psychologists. And then we had EQ, emotional intelligence. Well, why stop there? This is lifestyle intelligence, which is foundational because the other things are dependent. Are you taking good care of yourself? How you handle difficult emotional states and being able to activate all your intellectual capabilities as best you can. So we're all in this together. All of these things make up who we are, and we're all kind of lucky to be alive. So why not do it right?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Well, I just want to thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
Sharing all this amazing information. And I really hope that a lot of you will take advantage of this and be able to bring it into your own life and experience this for yourself. So for those of you watching on YouTube, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you give this episode a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And for those of you listening on your favorite podcast host, we appreciate you. And I will see you next time. Thanks for joining us today on the Human Optimization Podcast. Episode technical production is by Grace Sylvester and guest booking by Stu Tate. Want to learn more? Visit Pitel-Killah.com for incredible free resources to supercharge your journey to becoming the best version of you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe to the Human Optimization Podcast and follow me on social media at Pitel-Killah.